We have an awesome interview coming up with Hans Gildein.
How you doing?
He's a local investor from the Valley. He started White Fox Homes. He acquired 36 units in just the last 2 years. And you have some other interesting things in your portfolio, which I'll get to. And you're definitely an expert in construction management, so we'll go into that as well. So first, just tell us your story. Tell us more about you.
Yeah, it's a long story. Feel like I've been doing it forever, and it took forever to get started. I probably started thinking about this in 2004, 2005, watching the silly flip this house shows. I loved them. I was like, I can do that, And like around 2008, I watched a flipper 3 doors down, flip a house. And I went over and shook his hand, started talking to him, and he worked for Remax, and he recommended if I was going to get in the business to go, to join Keller Williams, which I thought was great. So I entered the business as an agent, not intending to be an agent forever. My brokers here, don't tell them, I'm a terrible agent. But no, I was good enough to work for a while and make some money at it and get going and get in the business. And that was my goal, to just get networking and meet the right people. And I ended up working for Don Winter, which is a local company here, DLP. And maybe you've heard of them, maybe you haven't. They've almost moved out of real estate at this point. They're almost in lending. And I ended up doing a lot of lending work with them. So I just got exposed. And that was my best opportunity, was just the education. And I think leaving myself open to just go wherever wherever the current took me to find my footing in the business was key.
That's awesome. So tell me about your portfolio, because I know you've been interesting in how you got started and kind of how you built up. I think a lot of people here resonate with that. So give us some more details on how'd you get started, how'd you build?
Yeah. Slowly, of course, and really my first rental was my first primary. I bought a little, twin back in 2000, lived in it for 15 years, and then bought a bigger house and just kept that and rented it out. So that's like the super easy way to get your first rental. You already have it if you're living in a modest house. If you're already living in $1 million house, it's going to be tough to turn that. But it was a nice little twin, and now it's renting for like $2,000 a month, and my mortgage payments, 30-year fixed for 3.5% or something silly like that. So that thing's just cash flow.
That's awesome. So you got your first one, and then where'd you go from there? Kind of, how'd you get the next couple? Because now you have a sizable portfolio. So
Yeah.
how'd you get there?
Yeah. So again, I was working for the right company. I was really, kind of in the middle of leads and lead generation and being at the right time and right places. And one of my first deals was a deal that Don literally didn't want, the owner of DLP.
That's awesome.
He's like, actually what happened was, we analyzed the deal. I went out and analyzed these deals for him to take them down. And I said, we should buy it for $41,000. It was a little row house in Allentown. And we locked it up. I had the papers signed. I'm literally walking out of the house, and Don calls me and he says, you know what? I want it for 35. I'm like, I just signed. And I let it brew for like 30 minutes, and I called him back. I said, Don, I'll buy it for 41, and I'll give you a couple thousand. And that was the way I got my first deal.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I was in and out for like total after repairs $55,000.
That's awesome.
And it rented at like $1,000.
What I think what's cool about that is I think a lot of people have different standards. And if anybody here is getting started, a big piece of it is like someone's standards might be completely different from yours. So if yours is different from his, well, that's a great deal for you. And maybe it was different for him, but it still worked. So you still did the deal.
And it worked for him because he made a couple grand in the deal, and that's all he was interested in doing anyway.
There you go.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So tell me about, as you built, what were some of the challenges that you ran into? What were things that you wish you would have known earlier on?
Well, cash flow is always a challenge, and I did not quit my full-time job for 8 years, while I collected properties, and I just, listen, this is how realistic it is to do this. I was making around $65,000, $70,000 buying as many properties as I could possibly buy because I could buy them in the right formula. I could walk out of there with maybe 2,000 or 3,000 of my own money tied up in after the end of the burr, right? At the end of the burr, I locked up $2,000 on a property that's cash flow. Next. So, you know, it went from like, the first year I had 1, then I bought 2, and then I bought like 8, and then I bought 12. and then I was, I had to breathe.
So was at that point, was it challenging when you kind of went quickly and then looked back and kind of stabilized? Like, so do you recommend somebody just powers through and goes 100% in, or do you think they should?
Yeah, because you realize you don't realize what you can't handle. There was just, I don't know. You don't stop yourself unless you stop yourself, I guess. It just didn't feel like. I got in this business thinking if I could buy 10 houses, and then I met a guy buying 10 a month, and I'm like, oh, I can buy more than 10 houses. And so it's just perspective.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So you have an interesting project now. You have a hotel/bar that you're working on. Give us some details.
So the crazy thing is that mailers actually work. I got this on a mailer.
Who does mailers here? Still, anyone?
Right? Still, exactly.
I love that.
So I mailed the whole valley, and I mailed like, this may have been off of one of the lists, off the probate list. So this was coming through probate, right? And you can get that list at Allentown, or you can just pull it at the courthouse monthly, and you can create your own mailing list for free. So yeah, I mailed a couple of flyers out, 2 or 3 flyers, and this one just hit, and she called back. And at first, sounded so crazy, so weird the way she described it. I passed on it. I was like, it didn't sound like what it is, and it sounded like completely commercial. And I was like, oh, it doesn't really sound like what I'm looking for, but whatever. And anyway, she called back, thank God, and yeah, we ended up putting this deal together. It was a hotel bar, a bar on the first floor, and 16 rooms in the second and third floor, and the building across the street, which is 3 units.
That's awesome.
So 21 units total.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you operating as a bar currently, or are you in renovations?
We're in renovations. The focus initially was to stabilize second and third floor, which was 16 of the 18 units, right? So, or 16 of the 21 units. And now the bar is in a weird conversion spot, right? Where I can run it as a bar, or it's actually been approved to convert to 2 units. So a bar is a lot of daily concern, and 2 quiet units sounds really cool to me. So top 2 floors are stabilized, and I'm literally refinancing it and setting up to finish the first floor and finish renting those places. So I'm at a really good milestone where I just got the appraisal yesterday. Got it appraised yesterday. I don't know if I made any money yet this year. I'll let you know next week.
We'll find out.
But that's been my primary project this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
How is the short-term rental, like the hotel style, different from your longer rentals? Like, do you prefer one over the other, or?
I love that long-term rental, and I know there's an Airbnb craze, and I have one of my rentals I turned into a furnished, and it's in Bethlehem, so I can't do Airbnb. You're not allowed to, but I can do what's called Furnish Finders, which is a monthly furnished thing for traveling nurses and such. I literally have a traveling nurse in there right now. When I was renting this as a 1-bedroom, just a normal, it was at what was he paying, $1,000? It's $1,900 as a furnished. So it was worth buying some used furniture at the thrift store, right? To get that thing. I mean, we had fun renovating. Carrie helped.
That's awesome. What's the kind of timeline look like? Like, what's your average stay for that building? Is it turned quickly? Is there a lot of kind of like they stay longer, or what's it seem like?
So the hotel, you mean?
Yes, the hotel.
So the hotel came with 9 people that were currently living there, and one of them we had to throw out, but I did manage to keep 8 of them for the whole renovation, and they're still there, and they have been there for years. So I raised the rent a little bit, but I'm not going to kill them because I want them to keep staying.
Yeah.
And I'll make most of my money on the new tenants, and they're coming in The new tenants are probably coming in around 15% higher, 20% higher than the long-term tenant, than the older tenants.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good mix of people. It's retired, it's Social Security, income, and there is some working folks that work 9 to 5 and just can't afford a roommate, or that's their roommate. The rest of the house, it's $750 a month, and that's it. You share a bathroom. What's so bad about that? If you want to save money, it's not that bad of a deal,
Right.
You're
in it right now and you're still working through it. However, would you do another one of these again?
Oh,
would you tell somebody else like, yeah, I like
man.
it?
Yeah. Oh, well, I do
Interesting.
love it though. I'm like,
Okay.
I dream about renovations sometimes at night.
I love that. All right, let's talk about construction a little bit. I'm curious. So you talked about your kind of focused in the construction work and focused in the draws. Do you want to give some more insight into that? What did you do? What's your expertise? And then I got questions on that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I really did have a good opportunity at DLP following Don around and was able to do a lot of different roles for him. And one of the roles was, he ended up lending to everybody in this room. I mean, lending to this kind of structure. And so I'm on the back end of that. I end up being an underwriter. I'm literally became a construction underwriter just by being there, right? Being in the right place at the right time. And we would analyze the deal. So if you would bring a deal to me and I'd say, hey, you got $50,000 on this, blah, 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 but you really need 100, we're gonna have a conversation, right? And I'm gonna help you bring that budget up and or bring it down, vice versa, right? And then on the draws, when you do your drywall, your whatever, I'm gonna say, well, it was complete, so it was really enjoyable because I was able to help a lot of people work through their situations, work through their rehabs, and it was fun.
I have so many questions I want to ask here. So one, have you seen it, is it always more advantageous to finance the rehab, or is it completely situational, or would you say it's more advantageous to do it cash?
Well, certainly situational, but you're gonna be able to do more when you have your financing set up ahead of time. Ideally you might be able to spread your money. If you have $100,000, you can spread it between 2 or 3 properties and do 3 properties at once. If you're trying to finance your own, you're gonna wait 6 months between properties.
Tell me more about that. So you're saying you could spread it across a couple different properties. Does it have to be in the same loan, or can you work that separately?
Well, I mean, if you had like $100,000 to work with, right, and you could put it all down on one property and then just no financing at all, but
I
you
see
save
what
money
you're
on
saying.
financing, you're going to slow down.
Right.
But if you just use that as your down money, as your seed money, as your operating capital, you'll be able to move through 2 properties, 3 properties, of course.
Love it. So use the leverage.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the scope of work. So talk to me about that. Do a lot of people get that wrong, or I'm sure you got stories. So.
Yeah. I think what's misunderstood is sometimes about a scope of work is how important the timing is. When your contractor's giving you a bid for a kitchen, he's kitchen, bathroom, floor, windows, right? He's just very linear, but he's not really thinking about when it's going to get done and what should get done to trigger the draw so that people can get paid, right? So when you have a kitchen, you should break it down. Rough electrical, framing, tile, cabinets, counters. You should break that down individually so that the bank can identify it and give you X amount of dollars for your framing in the beginning of the kitchen and X amount of dollars for your cabinets when you order them, et cetera, et cetera. When you give them the information they need, that's what they need. Then they can just throw it in their calculator and complete your draw. Make it easy for them. Don't make it hard for them.
All right, so let's back up. So there's a lot of guys here that I know are like, yep, cool, makes sense.
I know, I threw like 1,000
And
things
then
out of there.
I think there's some people here that are like, all right, wait, you said finance rehab, and now you're saying rough in and all these things. What does that mean? So if somebody doesn't know, walk them through the process of how does that go? If you go rough in, you go this, you go that. Walk them through what should it look like.
Okay, sure. Probably 3 core phases. You want to break your scope of work down to what's gonna happen in the rough, your dirt work, if you have to do any digging, if you got the demo, and you got, you know, the stuff that just creates havoc, you know, tearing walls down, you're gonna get paid for that early, and you wanna break that out early, and you wanna have, the next point might be frame up, you know, where you're coordinating with the inspections is one of the easiest ways to do it, right? When you're bringing your inspector out to check your frame up and your rough plumbing and your rough electrical, you might as well get a draw then, because it's a great checkpoint, right? And then align your next checkpoint with finished drywall or finished paint or whatever. There's a great point there where, all right, all the walls are in and everything's painted. You can tell that everything's painted. It's pretty easy for the bank to figure that out, right?
I
So
love that.
there's like built-in obvious checkpoints to create, and then like cabinets, of course, they're a big ticket item. Windows are a big ticket item, you know.
So if I'm an investor and I'm like, that sounds good, should I expect my contractor to go do all that, or is it me as the investor that should be running that process?
It depends on how your relationship. So I act as my own GC. Even though I hire a GC and I call him a GC, he's really my carpenter. You know, I don't let him do the plumbing, I don't let him do the electrical or the paint. I just need him for the carpentry. So I run the job, I coordinate with the plumber and et cetera. Whoever is coordinating your trades, that's your GC. Then it could be you.
Gotcha. And then you kind of talked about, you know, being smart about the timeline, having the draws come in. So in my experience and the ones that we've done, we've always had to front the money, then we get the draw, and we get paid back, right? Is that always the case? Is there any other scenario where the bank will do anything different?
It's always the case until there's a comfort level. In the beginning, you're gonna have to front until you can show that bank that you can handle it, and then maybe they give you a little seed money, or if you're gonna do a $30,000 roof, maybe they give you $10,000 for it in the beginning. But that comes with a relationship. That's not first draw, that's not first project, that's not fifth project, that's 10th project. You know, you gotta build that relationship with that bank.
I like that. The reason I ask that is I feel like when I first started getting into the draw process and learning this, I just assumed that the bank was funding the rehab. They'd give me a check at closing, and I would just go
No,
do it.
yeah,
And everyone's
right.
like, "Yeah, no,
No,
that's
no,
not
no.
how that works." So
You need to get some work done.
Right.
Because the value is not there yet, right? When you closed and you had $100,000 in construction to do, the property wasn't worth that yet. It still needed that $100,000 to be spent onto that project, and now it's worth it. Now the bank can release it. Their draws are all about leverage. They don't want to release more than 70% of the value of the property. So in the middle of construction, you got to kind of figure out, are we still at 70% of the value, or did we release too much?
All right, another question for you. So you kind of hit on this already, but what are a couple of the biggest mistakes that you've seen people do? So you hinted about timeline a little bit, but are there any other huge things?
I think the biggest, simplest mistake is going too far. Most of these houses don't need a full rehab. They don't need you to rip the walls down and redo the plaster, and, you know, just preserve that lath and plaster. That shit's beautiful. It's cheap to leave it up.
So you gotta get to the mechanical.
Yeah, but you poke holes in it and then you put it back. You know, you know, if you don't have to do a full rehab, don't make it a bigger project than it doesn't.
I like that. Was there a lot of times, and it just made me think of it, do you have any stories of people that either did way too small of a rehab budget or just way too big, and you went in and you're like, here's this, here's why?
Yeah, sure. And sometimes you question them. You know, it could be like a unique project, and they got like they want to build some weird stuff, so they have an explanation of why they might be have a weird budget, but yeah, the biggest thing is you want to align your budget with what you're really going to do. You want to be honest with yourself. You know, if you think it's going to need $50,000, then budget for it and allow for it. And try to spend 40. That's fine, but have 50 sitting aside, because you're probably going to spend it. You know, you're probably going to go over 10%. I've gone over 10%, 20% on every single budget. I'm not proud of that, but it got the job done, you know. And
I think if we ask the room here, who here is going over budget, anybody that's done work would say I have.
Yeah, you know, it's part of it.
Okay. In terms of either building your portfolio or that experience, what was the biggest mistake that you've made, and what was the biggest success that you've had?
Well, the hotel's a slam dunk, that's for sure. But I do have, like, I did get a deal and that I almost turned my nose up at, and it's on Clay Street now in town, and it's a crappy little row house, and it's no parking, and it's on a little alley, and you know, and it's, you know, Dale, you're probably thinking it's barely worth $100,000. You know what I mean? Like it was. I got it for $28,000. It needed $5,000 worth of work. I put a Section 8 tenant in there. I did a couple Section 8. It didn't hold tenants very well for some reason. But after, I think I held it for 5 years, and I sold that for like 150 or something ridiculous like that. It's just, it was, and it was one that I was like, oh, it's an alley property. I almost didn't buy it.
Yeah.
You know, no parking. Yep.
That's fantastic. And it just shows too, I think if you just hold something and you make it work, it's just, especially in this environment, it would be so worth it.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah, long-term game.
All right, before I hit the next section, any questions? Shelby?
You said you were doing like one at a time, and then eventually you got to being able to do like 12 a year.
Yeah.
How did you make that transition? Like, I'm at the one at a time
Good.
spot, and I can't
Great.
figure out how to like.
It's about to happen, probably.
Right. How did you make that jump? Like, how were you
So-
financing 12? Were you like losing your mind managing 12?
Well, that's
locations?
about when I got my mom involved.
Okay.
And she was a bookkeeper, and she has been helping me. And I'm gonna tell you right now, there's no way I could have done this without her. There's no way, you know, because she handled making sure we were paying the taxes. I mean, mortgages and everything. I mean, you know, I'm out there just swinging hammers, and she was essential. So that's key. Probably haven't helped. But I was also working for a lender, so it wasn't too hard to bring a deal to my boss and say, oh, here's what we're buying this month. He's like, yes, good for you. You know, so approvals were really easy. So I definitely had an advantage there, but it was also like aggressiveness, you know, finding those deals and not being afraid of them. And, you know, I was very strict about my model. I had an awesome, I still have it, a nice little spreadsheet that works it all out, where I can figure out that I'm gonna tie up $2,000 on this property, or I'm gonna make $2,000 on the refi or something like that. Great, I'll take those all day. So that was the key. At the time, the market allowed me to not tie up a lot of capital. Right now, the market almost requires you to lose 10% into a
Yeah,
deal.
I'm leaving too much money.
You're leaving a lot of money on the table, and you're just not gonna get it out for years. It's just, you're tying up that equity.
But when you were financing 12 a year, you were doing like small down payments. Like, how were you exactly financing that?
Right, great question, yeah. And that was where my mom came in. So she had like a $100,000 line of credit, and I had a little bit of money, so we would, you know, she would be my seed money on some of these, and then we would turn them and get all her money back on the finance. I'd pay mom back, you know, and we'd refinance like 6 of them at a time, so a blanket loan, you know, and then we just do the next few. You know, she was pretty nervous on the first 2 or 3. After we were rolling, she was in. She was like, all right, cool, you need more money? All right. Because I've been paying my mom 10% a year, or 10% flat since we started. I'm pretty sure I gave her $250,000. I had to have, which that's awesome.
Good for her.
Good for her.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Any other questions?
So
What would
you
your-
manage your own properties, or you have a property manager?
So I do manage them myself. I can't wait to be able to afford a property manager. You know,
Because it seems like because if the average property manager wants 10%, that seems like that would be your profit on the property.
that's what I'm living on right now, that 10%, right? So once I build up more equity and I can afford to hire Connor maybe, or a property manager, or turn it over to a property management company, but I gotta build up equity. I'm only in like a 55% equity position, and that's part of the reason why I'm working. You know, I think once you get down to maybe a 40% equity position, then you have that little extra flexibility, that little extra cash flow that you can give to a property manager.
that happens pretty quickly.
Right.
Since
Yeah.
you purchase 12, 30 units in a
Mhm.
certain period of time,
Yeah.
it takes you years to get there, but all of a sudden, 2 years, you're there and you're moved on.
Well,
And
it's-
now you opened up management, now you're free to do more,
Yeah.
and that's when everything really starts.
Really
to
starts to,
flow.
yeah.
So it's,
And-
it's
and
just
it-
like the learning
and it-
curve, and then it fades out.
It's funny you say that. I had bought like so many properties. I was up to 30 units. I think it was 28 units or something like that. And I was getting too busy. I could not handle my full-time job and keep buying properties. I needed to either go that route or keep working and just stop buying properties. And I decided to stop buying properties and just keep working my full-time job, and went into like cruise control, property management mode for like 3 years, and just wasn't paying attention. I know this is terrible advice. Wasn't paying attention to my numbers at all, and I added them up one day, and I didn't even notice the second million, and that's the name of the book.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Right?
If you could go back.
But that's how fast equity built.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden it was there. And I was like, "Ooh, holy shit," and then I put my notice in.
There we go. That's incredible. You had a question?
Yeah. What would be the biggest piece of advice that you'd give somebody who thinks that they're ready to get their first property, but they're hesitant, they're on the fence,
Yeah,
and they're
don't be
kind of
scared.
waiting to get like that nudge? What would be
Yeah.
your opinion, your advice to
We need to
somebody
go
in that
shopping,
situation?
that's what we need to do, I need to help you buy. Yeah, and it is.
Well, the first one's scary.
The first one's scary, yeah, the first one's scary. And in your position, you're young, and like you should be looking for you could afford to pay full price for a multi-unit and live in one of those halves right now, right? You could absolutely afford to do that, and one of the keys is now you have rental income on your tax returns that you're gonna need anyway, and you capture that through a personal residence. It's a real easy way to take something down. Yeah.
Yeah. And just to expand on that, I think the biggest thing that holds most people back is just the fear of it. I think like logically everything makes complete sense. It's just that like I'm nervous. And I think for somebody, especially young, but really anybody, like what do you have to lose? And I'm not saying you have nothing to lose. I'm saying evaluating what you have to lose and just deciding if it's worth jumping over the fence. And then, you know, if things go south, just make sure you can cover it and just be smart about it. But I think in most cases, as long as you have people around here that can guide you, you're not going to lose. There's no
Oh
way.
yeah,
out.
you have way too much good advice on your side to go wrong.
Don't listen to them.
Don't listen to the internet. Yeah.
I'll say I've interviewed so many people, and every single time, what they always say is, "I wish I bought more. I wish I bought sooner." So just buy. Just try to throw the fear away.
Yeah.
Michael, do you think it's a matter of the wish or the time or the information, the occasion? Because
A 100% desire. I think if you don't want it, you're not going to do it.
No,
I think you can come
absolutely.
up with every excuse in the world. If you want it bad enough, you'll get it. So.
Well, listen, the hard thing is, if you've been brought up in a way that you've constantly been told you can't, you have to take yourself out of that.
Yeah.
So you, either through peers or just on your own, you've got to go figure out, I've got this mindset that's not allowing me to get over this hump,
It is mindset.
but there's a way to get through it. I need to find out how to get through it. And then once you do, and you get on the other side of it, you're like, oh, I should have did that 5 years
Yeah,
ago.
how did I not
And,
see
and
that
hopefully
before?
you can use that to leverage for the next one. And same thing with you doing the first deal, it's the mindset. And it comes with experience. As we're getting older, our job is to share that with younger people or people just getting into it, because I like to see people's learning curve from how long it took me to figure shit out, not just in the business, but across the board with all the things in my life. Let me just share that with somebody younger so that when they get to my age, they're way up here compared to where I was. So then my life had some kind of meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Love
Yeah.
it. So good.
I think we're all there. So like,
And you can always
just
learn
gotta get
more, no
yourself
matter
there.
how much you know.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you hit that point, but the matter is simple. The point is great. Now, one thing doesn't have to do with another. Having information, mindset, availability, everything. So it comes now for you to be in action. maybe your credit score is messed up. Maybe you don't have the resource of funding. Maybe you don't have a partner. Maybe Cole has a deal right now. Cole, I want it so bad.
But that's
With
still your,
the credit.
that's still your bottleneck.
Yeah, that-
So
that-
you're
those
still
are-
you're still bottlenecked in your mind because you're looking at that as your limitation. It is, but if you could tell yourself, hey, if I didn't have that thought, what options could I explore? Oh, I could meet someone here, like you had mentioned that, you know, he put himself in a position as a lender and he had easier access, so immediately we can say, ugh, that's how he did it, I'm not in that place.
Right.
Well, guess what? You could find someone in here who's maybe lending, and all of a sudden you're buddies, and hey, would you guys
Everybody
want to partner
starts
up?
somewhere.
Somewhere.
Hey, listen, you can be the cleaner. You know how much I pay cleaners? You can save a lot of money being the cleaner of your own properties. Like, it doesn't matter as long as you find somewhere
The
to
more
make.
you know, the less maintenance costs you have. If you don't understand what where I see owners lose out the most is they don't understand the maintenance
The maintenance,
costs.
yeah.
Like, there's a lot of realtors that will give people a bad bill of sale and be like, this property's great, you're gonna make all this money on this property. Oh, they forgot to tell you there were termites
Yeah,
and
they
you
don't-
need a
yeah.
new sewer. So you need to understand what it's gonna cost to not only turn the unit, but also what to maintain it, because maintenance is gonna be your biggest expense.
I think on that, it's having a Dallas in your corner to make sure that you don't make a mistake. So
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's your professional responsibility to look out for your clients and be like, not be afraid to be like, hey sir, I think you're not making a good choice.
yeah. Question.
All right, how you doing? My name is Ray Perez. I'm a few years. So essentially, I wanna add to it and actually ask a question at the same time. I used to be a banker as well, for Fargo, and so I know pretty much about the hard loans, the ESR, and all that stuff. But I would say, like, as a minority, you know what I'm saying, there's a lot of blockages ingrained in our DNA. It's not even because of you. Maybe because your grandfather that has been awarded to you unknowingly, right? So it takes a lot about reprogramming the mindset and actually push your bar forward. So the things that you can probably like you say, oh, I have enough credit. Well, if you have a partner that have a credit, he's the majority partner, he's your sponsor. The credit is nothing, but nobody cares about it. You know what I'm saying? So it just sometimes opening up our mindset to a bigger or higher goals or milestone, so that we ourselves can believe that we can do it. You know what I mean? Because sometimes, I'm talking about myself.
Sure.
But essentially it's like, all right, you know, you come to a study, whatever, you know, I'm from the Dominican Republic. So, you know, okay, go to work at Amazon, pick some boxes, save up for 155 years, and maybe hopefully so, you might put a down payment for a home. Then, right? You know, in your order bank, you'll be all right. I wanna get there, how can I get there? Okay, well, what are my options? Okay, you said partnerships are great. I have partners in all my deals. Okay, how can I actually, I'm an AI aficionado, so how can I use tools available in the market to increase my.
One of the best ways to get into the business, if you have credit issues or if you don't have money, is to just find the deals. If you're the guy finding the deals, then you get to sell the deals, right? You can go knock doors for free, you can go hand out cards for free, you can find deals for free, but if you control deal flow, you will make money because you get to sell deals. Then you're the wholesaler.
I'll give you a good example. I like selling and cold calling and stuff, skip tracing and all that good stuff. I skip trace a list of like 200 people, Pittsburgh, whatever the case. We found a 40 unit in Pittsburgh, value add. Guy was retiring, he didn't care about the deal. I never saw the deal. You know what I'm saying? But I have it on the ground.
It's a great example.
Right.
Yeah.
On the premises, we wholesale the deal.
Done.
We didn't have the capacity
Sure.
monetarily.
And you don't
whatever
need to
we-
wholesale.
Right.
You just gotta sell the deal.
So we humbly made 50,000 on it, 25, and the actual owner made the most money.
Of course.
Of it. But if I can add value to anybody in any sense or form, you can always, once you get that signed agreement to e-sign, I always back it back. You back your sign, whatever you like. you have the terms, value add, you know how the exit strategy, you're gonna cash out, refi, whatever the case might be, maybe you controlling the deal, then you can be the syndicator type of thing.
I love it.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
That's really good. And it's just taking advantage of the resources that you have.
Absolutely.
I want to do more questions, but I want to wrap up a couple things real quick. So I like asking the same 5 questions here to every one of my guests, and I always like to see their answers, right? So some of these we hit on already, but we're going to hit them again. So what separates a top performing investor from the rest of the crowd?
Probably decision making, hesitation, I think, owning it.
Love it.
You know,
Yeah.
just being aggressive, I think.
What's a daily habit that contributes to your success?
TikTok, no, I'm just kidding. Waking up early and having a routine, you know, waking up early and getting ahead of the contractors and getting your stuff done in the morning, you know, work like an employee in the morning and work and act like an owner in the afternoon, you know.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. What's a piece of advice that you give to yourself if you're starting again? I know you kind of already answered this, but
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised what you can do, really. You know, and obviously, if you're struggling with money, you go a different route, like wholesaling first, and you work up to it. But yeah, I think like you, Connor, go for it. Go for it.
love it. Do you have a favorite real estate or business book?
I did. Well, a couple. Early on, I liked The Millionaire Next Door, which was a real subtle book about just buying one and, you know, kind of building equity nice and slow. And it's a very effective book. And you're quiet, it spoke to me because I'm not, you know, I'm very humble. You know, I the lights are killing me. But it spoke to me because it's the unknown millionaire next door. You just don't realize it. You know what I mean? And I like that. Yeah. And then one of the more recent ones, and I didn't read the whole thing. I really just know the title, Founder's Mentality, and it's about an owner's mentality. It's about treating everything like it's your own, and I did it naturally when I was working for Don, running his flips. You know, I ended up flipping 300 homes for Don. And I didn't do that by calling him every 10 seconds to ask his opinion. I just, what would Don do? And that's what I did. You know, and it was a successful way to look at it. I just acted like the owner and got it done.
That's awesome. All right, last question. What's your favorite part of real estate investing?
You know what? Probably, I really love tenants. I know it's crazy.
I don't think I've ever heard
It's
anybody say
insane.
that in my entire life.
Where do you get these tenants?
I know that's so weird.
No, that's awesome. I mean, that's what we all should be. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, listen, I grew up working in the grocery store business and the restaurant business, and I was always in front of customer service, and I'm pretty good at customer service. And now that I'm literally just doing customer service for my tenants, and they are my customers. They are paying me every month, so I have a responsibility to make them happy. And one of my number one things I've always done, I just don't mess around with repairs. If there's a problem, I'm calling somebody. I'm calling that plumber out immediately, whatever. The number one reason tenants leave, as far as I know, as I've always heard, is lack of repairs or lack of response or just lazy landlords. And they don't have that with me. And listen, when I send my increase letters out, they never push back. They just never push back. And it works, you know. I can afford to do repairs because I can ask for the money, and I can give it back to them, and I can meet them with a smile, and you know, I have 100 people under me that you know, rely on me for their roof, and you know, that's a good feeling. They're appreciative.
You
I
take
gotta
care
tell
of
you,
them.
Yeah,
the people who chuckled about loving your tenants, it is so freaking true.
it's key.
I got a lot of units fast, so I had a property manager that was, you know, I'm sorry, not good.
Yeah.
When I fired them, I didn't evict one tenant for 3 years. I went there every month. They knew me.
They knew
Jimmy,
you.
can you fix this? It was done in 24 hours.
Right.
And they never complained about rent increase. Never. Yeah.
I think it's awesome. I love that. All right. I want to give you a round of applause. So thank you for being here.